Okay, we are officially 1 month away from the release of Avengers Infinity War, which means I gotta start doing a lot of videos about it. That's YouTube life. Chase those trends so you get that sweet view count up. Let's start simple with comics. Like all the Marvel films, this one is based on a particularly popular comic book storyline. Let's say you wanted to read the comic that Infinity War is based on. You would assume you just go out and actually buy the book, The Infinity War, right? Well, actually, no. In this case, you'd be wrong and sorely disappointed. You're gonna want to read Infinity Gauntlet, and no, not this Infinity Gauntlet. It's confusing. Let me try to explain. On April 27th, Marvel Studios will release Avengers Infinity War, the culmination of their 10-year experiment to tell one big-ass story interconnecting 19 different films together. But you knew that already. If you didn't, you've probably never seen this channel before, have you? Hi, I'm Will. I talk about comic books and movies every Wednesday right here, youtube.com/wolfden. Avengers Infinity War tells the story of Thanos the Mad Titan finally enacting his plan to collect all 6 Infinity Stones. You know, those weird magical rocks that keep popping up in all the other films. He's going to use them to power his Infinity Gauntlet and destroy the universe. Now, of course, Avengers Infinity War is based on a classic Marvel comic, but that comic isn't called Infinity War. Now, to be clear, there is a comic called The Infinity War. It's a 6-issue miniseries from 1992, written by Jim Starlin and illustrated by Ron Lim. But that's not the book that you want to read. For one thing, it's not that good. For another thing, it's actually the sequel to the book you want to read. What you want to read is The Infinity Gauntlet, another 6-issue miniseries from 91, also by Starlin and Lim, with additional art by George Perez. This story is much more in line with what the upcoming film is going to be about. This story is about Thanos collecting the Infinity Stones, known as the Infinity Gems in the comics, and wiping out half of the universe, all to impress the literal personification of death in the Marvel Universe. Yep, half of all living things in existence gone just like... Naturally, this brings him into conflict with the Avengers, who miraculously weren't part of the massive genocide that just happened. And not only do they defeat Thanos, but they use the Infinity Gauntlet to restore the universe to the way it was. That's not a spoiler, this is comics. Did you really think they'd let a massive twist like that remain permanent? The Infinity Gauntlet was a massive success for Marvel back in the day, both critically and commercially. And it was very influential in terms of how Marvel and even DC would do event books for years to come. It might be a little tough to get through now. Going back and reading older comics is often quite difficult just due to the way that the storytelling was done back then. But if you can get past the early 90s style writing, then you're in for a wild ride. Infinity Gauntlet was followed up in 92 by the previously mentioned Infinity War, which wasn't so hot, and then again in 93 with the trilogy closing Infinity Crusade, also by Starlin and Lim, and also not that hot. But even with the less than stellar sequels, Infinity Gauntlet is still rightly considered a classic Marvel story. It's one of the biggest and most outlandish tales they tried to tell at the time, and it was done with such passion and conviction, it's no wonder they would revisit it for a movie many years later. Make that they would revisit it for a movie and another comic book series, because in 2015, Marvel would release another miniseries called Infinity Gauntlet, this time tying into the 2015 Secret Wars event. This version, by Jerry Duggan and Dustin Weaver, doesn't really have anything to do with the original. Instead, it's about Anwin Bakian, a scavenger from the planet of New Xandar, who happens to find an Infinity Stone. This actually causes her to align with Thanos to find the rest, and eventually to an all-out war for the fate of her dimension. The 2015 Secret Wars had a lot of tie-ins that shared their name with other popular Marvel events. Civil War, Marvel Zombies, Planet Hulk, and Infinity Gauntlet is along those lines. It's not essential if you want to get caught up before the movie comes out, and hell, I would even argue it's not essential to Secret Wars. I just wanted to bring it up so that you guys don't get confused when you go to Amazon or Comixology or your local comic book shop and find 2 comics named Infinity Gauntlet. You want the one from 1991, not 2015. Nor do you want Avengers and the Infinity Gauntlet from 2010 by Brian's Kilvinger and Chirilla. I didn't even know this story existed until I was doing research for this episode. From what I could gather, it's a 4-issue miniseries from 2010 that retold the events of the original Infinity Gauntlet, but was aimed at a younger audience, with a less continuity heavy and more humor based story. I haven't read it, but from what I've seen online, it's not exactly a hated book. It's not something that a hardcore comic book fan might want to read, but it might be something their child would want to read. Something that's less serious and less wordy than the original to get them caught up to speed on the concept of the Infinity Gauntlet. So what's the point I'm trying to make here? The point is Marvel loves the Infinity Gauntlet. Ever since the original came out, they've been releasing other comic book series to try and recapture that magic. And it feels like this has ramped up substantially since 2012 when Thanos made his first appearance in the original Avengers movie. We've seen the two sequels, Infinity War and Infinity Crusade. We've seen the kid-friendly retelling and the weird reimagining for a completely unrelated event. We've seen Infinity, a very popular 2013 miniseries that saw Thanos invade Earth while the Avengers were off-planet. And hell, Marvel even brought back Jim Starlin to do a brand new Infinity trilogy before they had a very public spat and he cut ties with them. It still looks like they're going to release the first two books of that trilogy, the Infinity Siblings and the Infinity Conflicts, so yeah, get prepared for a lot of Infinity in 2018, not just the movie. But the 1991 Infinity Gauntlet, the one with this cover, is the important one. That's the one that the movie is going to draw a majority of its influence from. Everything else is secondary and tertiary, mostly tertiary. There is going to be another Avengers movie next year, so maybe that will take some influence from one of the other Infinity books, but we won't really know that until after Infinity War comes out. Until then, if you need an Infinity War fix, go and check out the Infinity Gauntlet by Jim Starlin, Ron Lim, and George Perez. And then, let me know down below or anywhere on the internet what you thought of it, or if you've already read it, let me know anyway. Also, let me know some of your other favorite Infinity-based Marvel comics. Like I said, there's a lot, and a lot of people liked Infinity from 2013. I haven't read it, but apparently the movie does take at least one scene from it. So maybe that's the secondary one, but everything else really is tertiary. Of course, new videos every Tuesday and Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's Wulff Den Live, so make sure you subscribe to see all of that. Like this video, share it with a friend who doesn't know the history of the Infinity Stones and needs to know where to start. Not that this is a whole history lesson, but at least they know the right book to read. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.